At this time, the people screaming for help, they became fewer and fewer, and it was not because someone helped them. I was thinking about everything. The funeral was kind of planned in my head. Like a movie situation, you imagine it was like me, my boyfriend's little brother, a friend, all our friends in the same funeral. It was the whole thing, like worst case scenario thinking at the same time. And we were 25, we were young.
Nat Geo is marking 20 years since one of the deadliest natural disasters in history. Tsunami, Race Against Time. Producer-directors Daniel Bogado and James Paris join us live from London this morning to preview this new 4-part series. Thank you both for joining us.
Thanks. Thank you very much for inviting us.
So I want to ask you first, Daniel, how do you begin to tell the story about the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, I should say, that took over 225,000 lives?
Well, the first thing that we decided to do, this would be an archive-led series, which would mean across 4 episodes, we would take the audience throughout the day through all the key countries, but all the material that you would see would be video archive of the day. So that meant we had to do a very, very extensive period of research to track down that archive. And we traveled to all these countries and knocked on a lot of doors of TV stations. And then once we found that video archives, hundreds of hours that had never been seen before by anybody else, we tried to find the people in the video, in those images, so they could tell us their story. So the end of that process is the series that's out today.
And we heard from one of those victims who survived the tsunami at the very beginning of this segment. James, tell us more about what voices are prioritized in the telling of this tragedy.
I think first and foremost, we wanted to speak to survivors who had direct and emotional testimony to give about their experience that day. That was the guiding light, the guiding principle for the people we were approaching. We were also very keen to speak to people who hadn't necessarily told their stories before. And throughout the series, there are people telling their stories to us who perhaps hadn't even told their stories to their own families. And we felt very privileged to be able to hear them, and we hope it really comes across that emotional intensity to the audience.
Absolutely. Now, James, I want to stick with you because this is your first project with Nat Geo. How are you looking back now at the experience?
Phenomenal. I mean, National Geographic have such an extraordinary heritage, such an extraordinary history of telling important stories. We were very privileged to be given 2 years to make this project, which is an extraordinary amount of time. But we thought that it was necessary in order to do all the original research we needed to find original footage that hadn't been seen and speak to many, many contributors who had never spoken before. But we could only do that because of the support that Nat Geo gave us, and we're very grateful for them.
And Daniel, your work spans genres, natural disasters, foreign affairs, true crime. But what would you say is really the common thread that connects your storytelling?
I'm very interested in people. Very interested in humanity. So in this particular series, and actually in all my series, I always just want to make them very human-centered. So in the Tsunami series, you experience the tsunami, but it's always through people who were there, and it's always through their emotional experiences, which I think are incredibly powerful, and it's incredibly rewarding watch to share these experiences with them.
Daniel, James, thank you all so much for your work and for joining us this morning with some more information about what we can see coming up on Nat Geo. We appreciate your time.